Hello everyone, and welcome to the Proudfoot podcast. Today on our fourth episode, we're going to be talking about rolling, proficiency, and advantage in Dungeons & Dragons 5e. So let's get started. In Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, there are three main types of rolls you'll be making. These are skill checks, sometimes called ability checks, saving throws, and attack rolls. Each of these are effectively the same. What you're going to do, if the DM asks, you'll roll a 20-sided die, or sometimes called a d20 for short, and add the appropriate ability score modifier from your character sheet. There are two additional things that can happen with the d20 roll. If you're proficient in a skill, save, or weapon attack, you also add your proficiency bonus to the d20 roll. Your proficiency bonus is another modifier that comes from your current level. At levels 1 through 4, the proficiency bonus equals 2, 5 to 8, it's 3, 9 to 12, it's 4, 13 to 16, it's 5, and 17 to 20, it caps out at 6. This is also written on each class's summary table, which we'll talk about in later episodes. So really, when you roll a d20, you add your appropriate ability score modifier and your proficiency bonus if you're proficient in the type of roll you're making. Now, there's one more rule that comes up when rolling the d20. Sometimes players are advantaged or disadvantaged. This means that something has made the roll extra easy or extra hard. So instead of rolling one d20, you'll roll 2. And if you're advantaged, you take the higher roll and add your modifiers as normal. And if you're disadvantaged, you take the lower roll and still add your modifiers as normal. Whenever you're rolling the d20, your DM will tell you if whatever number you got after you added the modifiers and proficiency bonuses was successful. How the DM determines what a roll needs to be successful or not will be explained in later episodes. Now let's talk about skills. So every non-violent action you may want to take in D&D is covered under the following skills. Each skill uses an ability score modifier. So strength has the one skill, which is athletics. Dexterity has 3 skills, which is acrobatics, sleight of hand, and stealth. Constitution has no skills associated with it, and this is partially because it's what's used to determine your character's health. Intelligence has 5 skills: Arcana, History, Investigation, Nature, and Religion. Wisdom has 5 as well: Animal Handling, Insight, Medicine, Perception, Survival. And then Charisma has 4: Deception, Intimidation, Performance, and Persuasion. The purpose of each of these skills is explained on pages 175 to 179 of the player's handbook, and ultimately the interpretation of this is up to the DM. Skills come up anytime a player wants to take an action that's going to require some amount of attention. So for instance, opening a door or talking to any NPC does not require you to roll a skill check per se, but say there's an enemy on the other side of the door that you want to sneak past. This might require you to roll a stealth check. Or if you are trying to gather information from an NPC that might be a little bit reluctant, maybe you need to do a persuasion check. So depending on the situation, your DM is going to get you to do one of these skill checks. And of course, don't forget to add your proficiency bonus if it applies to the check you're making. So really, skill checks are a way of getting at specific parts of the abilities that you naturally have and focusing on those aspects. Now I want to talk about saving throws. So saving throws are like a reflexive check in order to avoid or resist an effect. Now, each ability score has an associated save, and characters are always proficient in at least 2 of these saves. Saves being short for saving throws. So here's an example. Let's say you're fighting some powerful wizard and they summon a giant ball of fire where you're standing. The DM will probably ask you to make a dex save to avoid being burned. And then you would roll your d20, add your dex modifier, and your proficiency bonus if you're proficient in dex saves. Saving throws are often triggered by some event, so either a spell, a trap, or some other thing like a rock slide or maybe drinking spoiled milk. And we'll talk about spells in later episodes, but there are lots of spells that can make the target of the spell roll a saving throw. So we'll come back to that at a much later time. Finally, the last type of d20 roll is an attack roll. Anytime you use a weapon in attempt to hit an object like a door or a goblin, your DM will ask you to make an attack roll. Depending on the weapon, you'll either add your dexterity or strength modifier to the d20 roll. If you are proficient with that weapon, then you get to add your proficiency bonus to the attack roll as well. In later episodes, we'll talk about spell attacks, which have different rules, however they do still involve rolling a d20. Now you might be wondering, how do I know if I'm proficient in something? Well, this comes from your class, and that will be the subject of later episodes. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Proudfoot podcast. If you enjoyed it, please follow us on Instagram, Spotify, or Twitter. And as always, may the gods have mercy on your soul.